Welcome to Room 101 at Harrigan Compound West. It's story time. So I'm trying out some Seattle Pipe Club, their Pike Place blend, and this is actually pretty good. Maybe a lot better actually than I might have thought. I had tried their plum pudding. That's the one that gets all the press, of course. And the more people talked it up, the more I thought, well, this sounds like the perfect pipe tobacco. And I got a tin of it here, and I just thought it was dreadful. I don't understand what anybody sees in it. But this one, it's a different story entirely. It's got a nice airiness to it. It smells a little bit like autumn leaves, which is a smell that, if you were born and raised in New England like I was, is one of those smells you never actually forget, right? There's this beautiful odor, aroma to the entirety of New England when you're outside in the afternoon, and when the leaves stack up on top of one another and the wetness that gets in there. It's really one of those out of this world smells. I remember when I was a boy, a very young boy, getting into the big piles of leaves, just jumping into them and flopping about all the way down to the ground and being surrounded by the crinkle of the sound of the leaves breaking and the scent that gets let off the deeper you get into the pile. So this is actually, this is kind of good. At least much, much better than expected. We'll see over the next 10 minutes or so. I mean, that's all we've got here. So I don't know if I'll have a conclusion of any kind, but so far so good. So I don't know, maybe a lot of you know this, maybe you don't. I teach on college campuses from time to time, and I gave up full-time professor work a long time ago, but I still like to get back to it when I can. And one of those things that I end up talking about a lot in the kinds of courses that I teach is the way that delayed gratification paves the road for young people especially, but for just about all of us when we want to accomplish things. There's something about taking that goal, shifting it through time and working towards it, and not getting sidetracked by continual consumption of whatever the end goal is. It's typically something like money or happiness or family, whatever. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that we have the capacity as human beings to intellectualize these things and push it on down the road. And I present this as such a cold stone hard fact that anybody who disagrees with what I'm about to say must be out of their minds. All right, so keep that in mind. I get called on this from time to time, but I'll give you the ammunition that you need to come after me whenever you want. Because I remember it was April of 1986, and that's baseball season. And as you found out from my happy place, I am a diehard Red Sox fan. And I was in Boston at the time studying for a managerial accounting exam that was to happen the next day. To say that I cared not at all about managerial accounting doesn't even come close to how much I didn't care about it. I went to college like most people, not really knowing what college was like. I was first generation in my family, so we didn't have a big understanding to draw from. And I just figured, well, I'll go and I'll figure it out, which I tried to do. But probably didn't do all that well. My parents were dead set against me taking all these courses that I was taking in things like religion and culture. They had no use for these sorts of things. They didn't know why. They just thought it sounded kind of idiotic and frivolous. To me, it sounded interesting, and business courses sounded like death. And yet they extracted a promise from me that I would go back to school for my second semester, change my major, and major in business management, which, given that they were paying for it, I promptly went and did. So a couple of guys came over, and I'm sitting there at my desk plowing through managerial accounting, which is like eating burnt toast with no butter. I mean, it's just awful, dry, pointless. And they said, hey, we're going down to Fenway tonight. You want to come? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I got this managerial accounting exam. They said, no, come on, blow it off. And I thought, well, I've been blowing it off. That's why my grades are so terrible. Maybe I should stop blowing it off right now. And I said, thanks for coming by, fellas. I appreciate the offer, but I gotta take care of this. So the two of them left. I didn't even listen to the game on the radio. I was trying to concentrate, right? I could have watched it on TV, could have heard it on the radio, could have been to Fenway. I could walk to Fenway from where I was living in about 15 minutes. And I let all of it slide. And I put it out of my mind. It was a little painful, but you know, games happen almost every day. You go see another one next week when you don't have an exam. These were the thoughts I started thinking. And I studied and studied. I was still sitting in the exact same chair when there was a knock on the door. And I said, come on in, and the door opened, and the two of them were standing there looking like two weirdos smiling from ear to ear. I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with them. And one of the guys said, who holds the major league record for most strikeouts in a single game? And I'm a bit of a baseball fan, and I knew the correct answer was a small handful at 19 strikeouts. And they said, nope, because we just watched Roger Clemens strike out 20. I missed the first 20 strikeout game in the history of Major League Baseball, which, God help me, was one of the Red Sox in the prime of his career, because I had to study for managerial accounting. Ugh. So what's the takeaway here? What's the lesson? Well, the lesson is always the same, right? Delayed gratification is the key to long-term happiness. But every now and then, short-term happiness is way more important. And you should actually, first, maybe not major in managerial accounting, business management in my case. And maybe, just maybe, you should every now and then do something a little frivolous to give yourself a bit of a better attitude long-term. Because I got to tell you, I got the same C I was destined to get in that exam, no matter what I did the night before. It took another 2 semesters after this to figure out that business management was not the right major for me. And how did we find out? Well, I'll tell you the whole story some other time, but it involved a meeting I had with the dean of the college, of the business school, who looked at me and said, Mr. Harrigan, it's time for you to leave Boston University now. And on that happy note, I was removed from the presence of all the better students and sent home packing. It was actually, in the long run, the best thing that could have happened, because it opened the door for me to do other things that I was infinitely better at and infinitely more interested in. So, is delayed gratification important? You know, it kind of is. Is having a life in the here and now also important? Yeah, that's important too. And the trick of it is juggling the two, balancing the two in some way that makes sense right here, right now, and for the rest of all time. It's not easy, and you're going to fail a lot. But if you frame it that way in your mind, you're probably far better off than you would be framing it any other way. And I hope some of you out there can benefit from the terrible mistakes I made, because I wouldn't wish them on anybody. Actually, I'm not all that upset that they happened, because they deposited me exactly where I should have been all along. I just didn't know. And that's often how things go. As for Pike Place, this is kind of growing on me, I have to say. I haven't smoked a lot of this. The plum pudding put me off the brand entirely. But I got a couple of tins kicking around, and if this is more emblematic of what you get from the Seattle Pipe Club, I suspect I'm going to be a lot more interested in taking a look at some of these things. So until next week, when I try to figure out something else to smoke and something else to talk about, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you real soon.
H-A-R-R-I-G-A-N spells Harrigan, proud of all the Irish blood that's in me.
So, when I had my unfortunate interaction with the dean, and his name was Dean Christopher Queen, Dean Queen, right? He was actually quite kind. He had obviously done this before, right? Boston U is a big place, and lots of people get thrown out. Anyway, I was heartbroken, of course, when this happened, and I after the dean had his say, and it was my turn to talk, all I could say is, well, maybe I can come back for graduate school. And you could actually see Dean Queen holding back the laughter, the very possibility that this mess of a student in front of him might actually be able to handle graduate school. Of course, the game turned soon thereafter, and I did handle graduate school with relative ease, truth be told. The bachelor's degree was, of the three of mine, by far the most difficult. Master's and PhD, not so difficult at all, comparatively speaking. But there I was, and I thought maybe I could get back to my beloved Boston, Massachusetts in some way a couple of years later. It wasn't to be, and never did get back. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to, but fun to think about from time to time. Have a good week.